The client has spoken. We are taking this dresser and turning it into this dresser. Everybody, welcome back to Furniture Flipping Teacher. I'm Lauren, and I have another custom piece on my hands. Lately, they've kind of been flooding in, which I feel like this time of year, it happened last year as well. So I'm totally here for it and welcoming it. But we are going to do a major transformation on this dresser. It is for a friend that I've known for over 20 years, and she is having a baby. So she commissioned me to make over a dresser for the nursery, which I could not be more excited to do. So to be honest, she messaged me back in like 2 months ago, and I have been literally searching Facebook Marketplace, thrift stores, garage sales, everywhere I could possibly get my eyes to find a perfect dresser for the style that she wanted. It also had to be the exact dimensions, both tall and wide, to fit into the room, had to have the right look, had to be solid wood, all of these things so that I knew that this was going to be a quality piece for a long time coming. And so when I finally found this on Facebook Marketplace, it was kind of crazy because she had also been looking, and she messaged me this at the same time I was messaging the lady about coming and looking at it. So it was definitely a meant to be piece, and I'm so glad that we got to pick it up. It was only $100, and for this style of dresser and for the good bones that it has, that is really not a bad price. So once we found this dresser, she sent me over a couple of inspo pics that she wanted it to look like, and they aren't wanting it to be painted because they're wanting it to sort of match the crib that they picked up, which kind of has a little bit of a wood look, and that is exactly what we are going to be trying to achieve on this dresser. So we've got our work cut out for us. Of course, I am always going to start by cleaning. I am going to be using Simple Green, which is a degreasing cleaner, and it's just gonna get all that grime and dirt off from over the years. I believe the lady that we bought it from mentioned that her late husband had this since the 1950s. So it is quite old, definitely a mid-century piece, and so I cannot wait to give it a new life. So now that I've got the surface cleaned with my Simple Green, I'm gonna focus on the inside of the dresser. Probably hasn't been cleaned like since the 1950s. Who actually knows? But there is a lot of dust caked on there, and I just like to go ahead and use a shop vac to get all of the larger things, and then I'll go ahead and wipe that down with Simple Green as well. So as I was cleaning each drawer, I was looking, and there's a couple of nails that are holding down the middle drawer slide that just like either aren't in all the way or are really bent up or are just completely missing. So I found some nails here in the garage, and what I'm doing is just pulling those bent up ones out and then nailing in the new ones. Now these will not go anywhere, and they won't, like, since the other ones were like bent and kind of hanging out, they were scratching on the inside of the drawer tracks. And so now that they're nice and flush, they won't do that anymore, and they'll slide out nice and easy. So the top of this dresser has seen better days. The finish is completely failing. It is uneven in places, and it has a ton of water spots and things like that. So the best thing to do is to get rid of that finish, and you can go about that in a couple different ways. I lately have found that using a carbide scraper is going to be the fastest, most efficient way to get that first layer of finish off before then then going in with my sander. So I'm gonna be using this carbide scraper here, and I've still got the original blade on it. I don't really know how often you should change it out, but I will be switching it probably here in the next couple of projects. So what you do is you basically just apply some pressure here on the knob and back here on your handle. Not too hard because this dresser in particular does have a layer of pretty thin veneer, and so I don't want to gouge that in any way, but I am just going to go ahead and push down and scrape off the finish very carefully. Once you kind of get in a groove, you can go a little bit quicker. Just be really careful, don't cut yourself. I have cut myself 1 or 2 times and it doesn't really feel the greatest. All right, so that right there took me about 8 minutes to scrape the top. I do still need to go back with my sander, and I'm gonna use 120 grit to just go ahead and smooth out the rest of the areas and also get rid of any finishes that I may have left behind. Now that I did the top, got all that scraped and sanded, it is ready to go. I am going to go ahead and continue the same method on the rest of the base of the dresser. I've got 2 things. The first thing is my caning, which I found on Amazon. And then the second thing is these 1 1/8 inch slats that I went to Home Depot and grabbed. And I got about 48 feet of the slats so that I can take my drawer fronts, and then I'm going to basically line them like an outside border with the 1 1/8 inch slats so that it will then cover the outsides of the cane. So I'm gonna put the cane aside for now still, and I'm gonna move to the slats. And so with my slats, I need to cut ones for each top and bottom of the drawer and the sides of each drawer. And I am going to do that by using my new tool, these miter shears. Usually I would use a miter saw, but I've seen a lot of people using this, and I kind of want to see what all the hype is about, if this is going to be just easier to like snip it. Because it's such a thin piece of board, it should work. So that would be super awesome if I didn't have to get out my big miter saw. Here. So it looks like from side to side, they are 21 7/16 inches long. Of course, it's got to be like a weird measurement, but that's okay. So for these, I am just going to set this at a 45-degree angle because at my corners, I would rather them be a mitered angle than just a straight up angle. like a 90-degree angle. So I'm gonna move this to 45 degrees if I could figure out how. Oh yeah, there we go. Okay. And then just go ahead. I'm gonna do the first one first without measuring because I just need this end to be mitered. Oh, might be harder than I thought. That was difficult. Definitely thought it would be easier than that, but I mean, it gave me a nice cut. All right, so let's try again. I don't really have that much to waste, so hopefully it works out. Not giving up yet. I'm gonna keep going at this, try a little bit something different. I'm gonna have it on something so I'm not flailing it around everywhere, and hopefully that'll be a little bit more stable and easier to snip. Okay, we got all 9 drawers, frames cut. That took just over an hour, and I like the miter shears. It's definitely better than having to get the saw out, but I will say some of the pieces of wood were a little bit more difficult to cut, so Neiman's muscles came in handy for me today, that's for sure. Next up, I am going to start staining. So the look we're trying to achieve is this look of the crib right here. And I'm gonna do that by using some smoky gel stains by Lily Moon Paint. I did do some test swatches and I tested out Saddle Up and Old Fashioned. And from my eye and what the picture looks like, I think that Old Fashioned is going to be the one that I am going to use. So we've got it right here in the jar that it comes in, and I do have 2 of these on hand just in case, but I really think I'm not going to need to use that much. This stuff actually goes a really long way when you're applying it. So I like to use a mister bottle when I apply it, and then also a chip brush when I apply it, and then I will also take a lint-free cloth and wipe back any excess. Another thing I do like about the water-based gel stain is that it's kind of buildable, so if I don't like the look of it or if it's not quite matching after one coat, I can do another coat, or I can also grab another color like Saddle Up that I just showed you and maybe go in and do some darker areas to kind of get it to really match that look of the crib. So I'm just going to take my mister bottle, spray a little bit. I like to kind of work in sections for the most part. And so I've got this section here and I'll just apply some, spread it around with my chip brush. You can always be adding water to help you move it around really nicely. And then I'm gonna be taking my lint-free cloth, wiping it back. So there's my first section, and it's kind of orangey right now, but that's really just because the wood underneath is still wet. So once that dries, it will be a lot less orange and more of a lighter toned wood. It's time to install some caning on the drawer fronts, and then we'll frame it out with all the slats that I cut and stained earlier. So I did go ahead and soak this in the bathtub in some warm water for about 30 minutes, and that just kind of allowed it to soften up a little bit. It was really like, I don't know, it just didn't want to unroll. Stiff. It was really stiff before. So now that I can actually unroll it, we'll be able to lay it out and cut it to the size that I want on these drawer fronts, and then I'll attach it with my staple gun. Not too much cane left over. I pretty much nailed it right on the head with how much I needed. Obviously, I measured prior to ordering it on Amazon, but it was super easy to attach and put onto the drawers. So I'll link that down below in case you guys are interested in adding cane to any of your furniture. Super in style right now, so definitely something to kind of upscale and change up your furniture a little bit. Next up, we are going to be attaching the framing around the drawers. Okay, it is time to start connecting the framing on each of the drawers. When it came to this part of the project, I was a little bit nervous on how it was going to turn out because I was fretting about how the edges would look, since the cane is a little bit of a thicker material than I've ever done this with before. I was afraid that there was going to be like this huge gap right here, and even when I just lay these down on there, it's a pretty big gap, and I didn't want that to be the finished product. But after the whole night of fretting about it, I came out this morning. I just was like, you know what, I need to attach one, see what it's actually gonna look like before I continue worrying about it. I'll troubleshoot if I need to. But basically, in the end, it all worked out to be just fine, because now I will say, I was actually going to just do glue. I really didn't want to do the nail gun, but when I just did the glue, there was still a bit of that gap. And so I grabbed out my nail gun with a 5/8 inch nail, and that is how I secured it even more to eliminate that gap. So it really is secure on there. So moral of the story is, try before you get super frustrated or like get super nervous about how something is going to turn out. If it doesn't turn out at the end, like once you've tried what you thought, then you may have to troubleshoot a little bit more, and then you can get nervous, but at least try your ideas before wasting all that time and your nerves. time to install some hardware. So this is what we have chosen for the 6 outside drawers. So a lot of the times hardware comes with a couple of different screw sizes, and then sometimes there's also this adjustable screw, so there will be like little divots in between different lengths. So what that is there for you to do is to take some cutters and cut off as much as you need. So I don't need this long screw, it's actually too long. So I'm gonna cut off to the second divot because that's where I measured it should be. And then now I've got my screw that is the perfect length for these pieces of hardware on my drawers. Are looking good. All right, but now we've got a dilemma because when we were talking about hardware, my client had requested knobs on the middle drawers and handles on the outer drawers. But when I got to thinking, I sort of was imagining the middle drawers to have very similar holes as the long drawers, just in a smaller fashion. So I think I'm gonna do a little design change up, and I'm not gonna tell her, and we're just gonna see how she likes it. I personally think it'll be better, but I also think that she totally trusts my instinct and my gut, and from our previous conversations, it was totally leaning that way. So I am going to whip out the handles that I also got for these middle tiny drawers. Here's what the knob would look like. Here's what the handle would look like. I think it's just more cohesive with the handle. I don't know, the knob's kind of cute, but I just think that it just goes better with the handle. So we're gonna go for it. We're gonna wing it. We're gonna do it. Trust your gut. Let's do it. Hardware is on, last step, top coat. I am gonna be using Lily Moon's top coat. It's Stellar Shield. So it's gonna have like a low luster finish, but I'm only doing the top with top coat because the stain I use does have a built-in top coat, but I wanted extra protection on top since it's gonna be like a changing table slash dresser all in one in the nursery. So this will make it super easy to wipe off and things like that. So I'm just gonna pour some in here. And then I've got my blue sponge to help me apply. I like to get it wet just a tad bit, as well as my surface. Nothing too crazy. I don't wanna over wet it. And I'll just dip my sponge. Don't even need too much on there. And then drag it across your surface. All right, once that dries, we'll do probably 1 or 2 more, and then it's time for the final reveal. All right, it's time to go over the numbers. I've got it all listed out, the time it took me to do every single thing in generally the right order. So it took me 30 minutes for cleaning and drawer repairs, 1 hour for carbide scraping, 1 hour and 15 minutes for sanding, 25 minutes for cleanup after each time we sanded. We need to count each and everything, even if it seems minor, because those things all add up. an hour and 5 minutes for cutting the frames, 2 hours for staining the whole dresser and the drawers and the framing parts, an hour and 10 minutes for attaching the cane and soaking it and all of those things, 2 hours for attaching the frames and wood filling those and staining again. Touch-ups took me about an hour and 25 minutes. This includes adjusting of hardware, any last-minute touch-up areas I saw, 1 hour for adding the hardware, and 10 minutes for the top coat, which brings us to a total time of 12 hours. Flipping furniture is not always for the faint of heart. Sometimes projects that are more intricate and detailed are going to take a longer period of time. So also we need to factor in the cost of materials. So I got the dresser for $100. The cane cost me $85 on Amazon. I got 2 pretty good sized rolls so that I knew I'd have enough. And the hardware cost me $70. We got really good quality hardware that she chose. $20 for the gel stain. It cost $24, but I didn't quite use all of the bottle, so just accounting for that. The framing, the wood for that cost me $50, and then $25 for miscellaneous things like sandpaper, top coat, staples, nails, wood filler. All of those are, again, are minimal costs, but altogether they do add up. So that is a total amount of $350 spent on the dresser and materials. So I ended up charging and quoting my client for $1,050. That includes delivery to the room in their house in which this dresser is going. So if we take away the $350 cost of materials that I just talked about, that brings us to a total profit of $700, giving us an hourly rate of about $58 an hour. So I really enjoyed the challenge of this flip. I've never done something so elevated, I feel like. I just feel like the dresser, the look that it was before to what it is now is just a complete 180, and it's been a while since I've been able to do that. I think that the most challenging part of this furniture flip at first was adding the cane, but then once I did that and got through that, my next frustrating part, like I talked to you guys about during the video, was seeing if the framing was gonna look odd once I attached it because that caning was so thick. But it turned out that it really wasn't a big deal. And I think that the hardware can be a little bit of a tricky factor when you are talking about putting new hardware on, drilling new holes and all of that, but that hardware jig seriously saves my life every single time that I use it because it allows me to get it on there perfectly straight every single time, straight and even. I did have to touch this one up a bit because it was operator error. I didn't have the jig just right, so that one was fixed. But other than that, this flip was so fun and I'm so happy with the final result. So I was looking at the image that I showed you at the beginning of the video, the kind of this is what we're going for look. And then I looked at this dresser and I will say myself, I feel like I pulled it off and I feel like mine looks a lot better and
Doyle rules.
More high quality than that dresser does in its photo. I know that this is made of a lot more higher quality material and I am so thrilled to get this over to my client to see how she likes it in their brand new nursery. If you enjoy awesome videos like this where you get to see awesome furniture flips, profit breakdowns, and where I share tons of tips and tricks about furniture flipping, then be sure and get subscribed down below, and we will catch you next week for another awesome video. We'll see you on the flip side.